Deck is Les Minkus. Greg, I'm very sorry for butchering your name, man. But if you would, could you properly pronounce it?
Yeah.
Give us just 10 seconds of what you plan to tell us, and if you could, keep it within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank
you for having me here today. My name is Greg Wadinsky. I'm obviously an American citizen and a resident of Maricopa County. I want to talk to you a little bit about what I observed as a certified poll observer, election observer down at the Maricopa County MTech facility, the tabulation center as it's referred to. I'm going to refer to some of my notes, but in short, what I'd like to talk about is comments that were made to me by a Dominion employee around chain of custody and what I would discuss or describe as the ability of fluidity or porous administration on the system. As I mentioned, I was an observer at MTech on 10/24, and then again a week later on Sunday 11/1 before Election Day. I spent approximately 8 or 9 hours on site at the MTech facility. I obviously had the paperwork to be there, was badged, and I had the ability to move about the MTech tabulation room. I was in the area where they were doing adjudication work, and then later on the Sunday the 11th, Sunday the 1st, they were also doing ballot feeding and tabulation. What I observed in there was the Dominion computer system in what's described as a caged glassed area. There were several Canon scanners in there, as well as what I'd call 2 rather large bulk ballot processing machines, which are essentially OCR, optical code recognition scanners. I interacted with several supervisors. I will not mention their names here today, most of which are just by first name basis, and that was either inside or outside that room. What's most important is I had an opportunity to speak to a gentleman whose name I will not mention here, by all I know is his first name, but he identified himself as a Dominion employee on contract to Maricopa County for the election, and I observed him and another Dominion employee who I would say was in the capacity, as they described to me, as systems administration roles, and they demonstrated competence and knowledge around systems, access to the system, as well as the administration of that system. They were there to help the workers as well as the volunteer poll, not the volunteer, but paid poll workers to do the adjudication process, as well as any issues that may have occurred with the tabulation machines. What I observed was that the machines were optically reading the mail-in ballots, converting the paper ballots into an electronic image, and discerning the voter tabulation data into an electronic format. So think of that as an image, like a JPEG, a picture, as well as some sort of tally or calculation. I don't have intimate knowledge of the inside workings of the system. And then I also spent a day on November 5th in the signature room, but I will not discuss any of that today, but for the record. So on Sunday, November 1st, in the adjudication tabulation scanning room, and in witness with other observer who is here to testify today as well as my witness, I spoke to this gentleman from Dominion and asked questions on the computer systems contained in the room and contained within that caged area connected to the ballot scanners, the OCR readers. It was my understanding from staff as well as the employees that we were processing mail-in ballots, obviously, and that those tabulations were being fed into the computer system within that room, and there was an assurity that there seemed to be a level of physical as well as network security based on the arrangement of those computer systems. On that day, I asked the gentleman how the tabulation data and scanned images were being stored and backed up. It's common practice in computer system IT administration to do regular disk backups or system backups in the event that some sort of failure occurs to that system. The gentleman stated that he would perform a manual daily backup of the system to an external hard drive attached to and within the secured computer bay glass cage as I described. The hard drive was in a rubberized orange case and easily visible. He pointed to it and identified it. I asked what software program he was using to perform the backups. He stated he was not using an automated backup, but inferred that he was doing a simple manual copy of data to this orange disk, as I'm referring to it here in my statement. Then he said he took and made a second copy of that backup, of that orange backup, and then he reached over to his cubicle area and demonstrated a new box of hard drives that were contained in there, and he was saying that he was making a second copy of that data onto one of those fresh hard drives. That then led me to ask him a common question, which was, is there a chain of custody, and where does that drive go? He was a little bit vague in his answer, but he said that there was not a chain of custody, and that the copy that he was making daily of the master backup was being taken off-site to another facility, and he was unclear to me how it was, but when I asked him if it was getting serialized or in any way secured, he could not confirm that and basically said there was no chain of custody. I found that alarming. So later that day, on that Sunday, I then again, the same gentleman, observed him having a discussion with some of the staff and others, and I was able to walk about the room somewhat, and I came upon their conversation. And I overheard what he was talking about was, it sounded like he was trying to resolve a problem within the system that perhaps was slowing down the way the system was performing, considering that about 12% of the ballots that were being read at that point were going to what's called adjudication. So we're talking about tens of thousands of ballots a day. And they were very concerned about getting those ballots processed in a timely fashion, as you could imagine. So what he described to me was that he was having to take some of the scanned data and from what was an ever-growing large data file, so to speak, on the Dominion system with its storage, and break that larger file into small files so that he could then point those smaller files to the adjudication stations for more efficient processing. That sounded like a manual and complex task to be taking something that's ever growing, and I asked him, I said, that sounds like a bit of work. At any rate, what I discerned from that conversation was that by doing so, he was able to get some of that processing moving a little bit quicker, and it sounded like they were obviously trying to deal with the situation at hand. But what concerned me about that, and again, I'm only observing, was that it showed to me the fluidity and the porous nature of the access that the administrator had to tabulated ballot data. And that there was the possibility of that human intervention in the process creating a potential or non-intentional error or the potential for lost data or lost files. And that's what I observed on that day. When I left the facility later that day, I obviously reported some of my concerns, and then, of course, I'm here today to let you know what I saw.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Giuliani, do you have a question or two?
Sir, so can you help us a bit in what does that all lead you to, at least hypothetically, conclude?
Well, I think my biggest concern would be that we've been hearing from election officials and others that
Could you get just a little closer?
yeah,
Thank you.
we've been hearing from election officials and others about the sanctity and the security of this system. We've been hearing things about networks and data coming and going, and one of the most, I guess, basic premises of any kind of security would be physical security. And by having that disk drive copied and then shuffled off the premises, presumably, by this gentleman's statement, without a chain of custody, that's no different than ballots in a box, read or unread, coming and going without any supervision.
So this Dominion employee took these with him, could have taken them anywhere, and could have done anything with them that he wanted.
There's the potential for that, or have given it to another individual to courier it to whatever facility they were allegedly storing it at. So he was vague on those details. Perhaps he didn't know, but his job was to make that copy.
So why is there a chain of custody?
I would imagine there's a chain of custody so that we can prove that the data has not changed and it arrived at its intended destination unhandled and manhandled or any kind of malicious activity performed on it.
And this was a Dominion employee who did this.
That's correct.
And did any of the county officials try to stop him, try to interfere with him?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, he openly talked about what he had to do when I asked him the question on the backups. So I would presume that he was performing a function that he deemed necessary to make sure that there was some data backup copies made. But I can't attest to why the county or the other employees there or how they would have managed that process, other than the fact that he did indicate that it left the facility.
Did he indicate he was taking them with him, either home or somewhere else, to do something with them? Was there a purpose to it?
I did not hear him make any mention of that. My concern was, where did it go? And he inferred that he thought it might be going to another facility uptown.
He thought it might be?
Yes.
He didn't know where it was going to go?
Well, that's his words. I don't know if he actually knew. I can't read his thoughts, but my point is that his answers seemed a little bit vague and perhaps honest, but nonetheless.
His name was Bruce?
Yes.
You don't know his second name?
I don't.
How old was he?
I would say he was probably in his mid-40s at the oldest, about 200 pounds, 5'8", 5'9".
And when you asked him what he was doing, he said he was bringing them uptown?
He said that the copy of the backup drive was being taken off-site, which is not an uncommon practice to have an on-site and an off-site backup copy. But when I asked him how it was getting there, how it was being transported, if it was being secured, and where it was landing, with some assurity that it got there, he said there was no chain of custody.
But he said nothing else about where he was taking it, what was going to be done with it, or anything like that?
No, again, implying the normal nature of what an administrator would do for backup, he probably was intending for it to be secured safely in the event that it was needed for some sort of restoration process.
How often did this occur? One time?
He told me that he was doing this daily.
So every night he would take out the drive with him?
He would make a copy to the main, what he called the orange drive in the cage in the secured area, and then make a second copy for this off-site copy, which would then allegedly move out of the MTech facility to some unknown destination.
And when you objected to it, what happened?
I guess I really didn't overreact. I was there as an observer, and I guess it wasn't my question. I did feel it was my position to get confrontational about it, and I just quietly made my observations and duly noted them to the proper authorities.
Is there anything else you noted about the facility?
I would say that, I've seen some publications around the county's installation of the facility and the idea that it provides a level of transparency to the community. It's visible if you have access to the building, the server's visible. My concerns, though, would be that I can't say with because I just don't know whether or not, by just looking at that facility and looking at the way the servers were secured, whether or not anyone else had particular access. I mean, there were many workers in that area, including the Dominion administrators. There was, at any given time, 15, maybe even more than 20 people working on adjudication in there, as well as the staff from the county. So
when they were taking the copy, making the copy, did they do any data checks before removing the drives so they could compare it when it came back?
My question to the employee and his answer didn't include any speculation around that.
Did you see that happen?
No, I did not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any questions? Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, you mentioned earlier that you said that you reported your concerns after this all took place. Who exactly did you report your concerns to?
The Observer program, I was told to go online and make a report. And then later on, when I was reached by the coordinator for that, they asked me if I would make a declaration, which is why I'm here today.
Do you know if this information, as far as the lack of chain of custody, because I understand that from your explanation, this orange hard drive would be like essentially the entire electorate's votes that's
always fun.
kept in there. To your knowledge, was this ever, the report of lack of chain of custody ever given to the Attorney General's Election Integrity Unit?
Not to my knowledge and not through me.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your time.